Hey there, it's Nick Warren here, and I'm here with my friend Matt Goddard, who is the MD of UX Consultancy. And we're talking because Matt's just published an article about the principles that his company, they do digital development, they do UX, they do design, they're building products. We're here because he's written this article about the principles that the company is kind of founded on, the way that they approach their kind of accelerated delivery. And Matt, I just think it's going to be interesting because I've noticed when you talk about things, it's one thing when you write about stuff, but when you talk about things, we get to see you animated, and there's often bits that sort of come out. So why don't we start by, why do we put principles, why do principles come before all the other stuff? Obviously, if you're developing digital products, you've got processes, you've got loads of tools. I'm sure there's loads of technology that goes into the creation of apps and websites and what have you. Why do we put principles first?
Principles are kind of like the anchor point of all of those things that you mentioned. Like you can follow processes, you can, tick off checklists, you can do all of those elements that emulate a good process or a good way of delivering. But unless you understand the principles and you know why this is happening, what you tend to lack is the ability to create a consistent and repeatable outcome. So for me, the principles are fundamentally important. And as an illustration, about 3 or 4 years ago, a friend and I wrote a book called Ready for Remote. This was before COVID. It was before the pandemic. It was, we were leading remote teams in organizations. And everyone at the time was concentrating on things like, how do you use Trello to, sort of have a Kanban wall of work in progress and stuff like that, or, utilizing Teams for meetings, things like that. And no one was talking about what are the principles that underlie a good remote work practice. Some of the principles that we developed there, I realized were like foundational principles for good delivery processes generally. There was always this conflict in my mind was what's about remote work and what's about development teams. And Gary and I were always talking about how to differentiate that. But fundamentally, the principles are the things that allow you to align and to understand whether the processes and the procedures that you put in place support the outcomes and the behaviors that you want to see in your organization.
So they give you that kind of, like a North Star kind of...
Yeah, absolutely.
That orientation.
Yeah, for sure. Because you can have a new thing that crops up that you haven't written a standard operating procedure for, or you haven't written a process for. And if you don't understand the principles that underline how those things were created before, you will not know, you cannot understand how to develop a new process to support that new outcome or behavior that you're working towards. If you understand what the principles are, you have a much better shot at adding a new standard operating procedure or something to allow you to systemize and create a consistent process out of it.
And the reason that matters, presumably, is because you're, as a business, UX consultancy is developing and building lots of different products for lots of different clients. You want to do it consistently, accurately, and speedily.
Yeah, I mean, from a UX consultancy perspective, absolutely. We work on a lot of fixed price projects. We work on a lot of time and materials projects, but what they all have in common is that, you have to be able to deliver high quality product as quickly and as accurately as you can. And this is not just true of agency businesses. This is true of every industry. You hear it on the news when the government talks about, like low productivity numbers in UK businesses, which is essentially down to this, principles like this will enable you to deliver quicker, more consistently, and at a higher level than if you just have the processes and you don't understand why they're doing it. It gets you like, the processes and principles get you like 70% there, I think, probably. But the principles, the underlying rationale, that gets you to the 100%. Because you can then account for things you never knew.
All right. So maybe what we should do is put people out of their misery and should we just list there's 4, right? We just list the 4 principles And then maybe we've
Yeah.
got an opportunity to go through each one of them in a bit more detail. You can explain why you think they're so important. So what are the four?
The four principles are trust, clarity, visibility, and consistency. And I've been talking about these principles generally for the last 10 years, obviously through the Ready for Remote process, through everything else. But they're the fundamental principles. And when I say them out loud, when you say them out loud to anyone, people go, duh.
Yeah.
Because they seem so obvious.
Yeah.
It's obvious that, you build trust. It's obvious that you should create clarity, that you need visibility, and you need to be consistent. They are obvious things to say, but the obvious things are not always the most well implemented or understood things. And that's what servicing allows us to do, right?
Right. So simple is not the same as easy. We know that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Lots of things that are simple, but they're easy.
Well, yeah, absolutely true. And so I always have this moment whenever I say to somebody, these are our principles, these are our foundational principles. And you look at them in the eye and you say it, and then you're like, okay, here it comes. Isn't there a tool that you can use for this? Isn't there a blah, blah, blah? And there are all of these things. All of these things exist, tools and principles and processes and standard operating procedures. But it's the understanding and codifying those principles is what makes for a sustainable, accelerated delivery process.
Okay. Well, so let's go through them. Let's go through them in a bit more detail. I mean, trust. I think you and I have probably been talking about trust for 25 years at this point. But yeah, let's talk about them in a bit more detail. So you're right that it is obvious that trust is important, but so many businesses don't optimize for this incredibly important thing that takes a lot of friction out of the world. But why don't you talk about how it works for you inside UX consultancy and business in general?
Sure. So you're absolutely right that trust is something that a lot of people talk about, and a lot of people but a lot of people don't know generally what are the sort of building blocks to support it. We think we know, but it's worth us having alignment and saying it out loud so that we know. So trust is about doing what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
What does it mean? Not only, and then what happens if you can't do what you say you're going to do? How quickly do you fess up? What standard do you hold yourself to in order to ensure that your team, your client, your peers within your business or outside of your business can rely on each other to get the outcome that they want? Because without that trust, you operate in an uncertainty within your business that means that you cannot be confident that you are able to execute in the way that you want to execute.
So you're talking about trust in the sense that your clients, your prospects trust you. It's also very much an internal, because
yes,
you've got team members who are doing important work. They want to be able to rely on the other people in the team.
Absolutely. You have to have trust internally and externally. You have to think a business does not exist outside of its clients in the same way that it doesn't exist outside of its people. Without people, you can't deliver. Without clients, you can't hire the people to do the work you need to do, right? So it's a closed loop, essentially. You build trust with your clients. The way you build trust with your clients is because you maintain and build trust within your organization. And so it's the whole thing is sort of feeds in itself. Things like, for example, if you're doing consultancy work with a client and they've asked you to do something which is not going to get them the outcome that they want, then you don't sit on your hands and say to that, you don't just say, yes, we'll do that because you're paying me money to do it. What you say is, you hire us because you value our expertise in helping you achieve the outcome that you want. What we think you're doing is not going to get you to that outcome. Have you thought about solving this problem in another way?
Yeah,
for example.
Be a cheaper way.
Yeah, it could be a cheaper way. And that's the other thing as well. You build trust because what you show is that you have alignment between your outcomes, your business outcomes, and you have alignment between your client's business outcomes as well. So your client needs to get a thing done. You obviously need to be paid for what you're doing. Sometimes those things might feel like they're at odds with each other because requirements change, and but you're still having to meet outcomes and sort of goals in order to get paid for things. And so, you need to have, when you build up trust, when those things come in conflict with each other, which they occasionally do, you're able to utilize trust as almost as like a currency to say, we need to get ourselves over this hump. How can we work together to achieve that?
Yeah.
A client might say, hey, you know what? I know I said this was our requirement. It really isn't anymore. We have to pivot on what we're doing. I know it's going to cost more money, but we've only got X amount in the budget. Can we work together to achieve that? Right? One of our fundamental principles, Nick, you and I have talked about this a lot for years and years and years, is how do you build relationships for the long term?
Yeah. So important.
If you have short-term thinking, then you are inclined to make short-term decisions which destroy the trust. So if you're looking at short-term single engagements with clients, then you won't be thinking about the long-term value of that relationship, and therefore you can't make smart decisions because you're saying, well, hang on, they want us to do another 6 weeks worth of work. They've only got 2 weeks worth of budget. That's not going to work. Well, no, it's not going to work. But the 10-year relationship, which enables you to recoup that value and more, index on trust behaviors.
Yeah.
Do the right thing.
Yeah. I mean, this is, we have talked about this a lot, but trust particularly with teammates, particularly with clients, it just makes everything easier. And it's such a good long-term investment, as you say. I'm amazed at how few businesses really seem to get that and really work at it. And I think partly it's because you can make the decision you just talked about, which is, I'm going to do 6 weeks of work for 2 weeks worth of budget because I believe in this relationship. That's a decision you can make because you're the head of the company.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the reasons why small businesses, or relatively small businesses, or businesses that are led by the founder, they have this advantage over a big company, because in a bigger business, the person who's making that decision probably couldn't make it. Because
no, there are layers, aren't there?
You can't see that far ahead. If you're thinking about the quarter or even the year, it's
but also the thing that we got to bear in mind though with that is that bigger businesses are not built to support trust throughout the whole layers of an organization, essentially, because when you're not a personal small team where you know each other and you have to rely on hiring loads of different people in, then you have to create processes that create the indirections to making the right decision. You have to say, okay, well, I need to get this approved by this person and that person. You're not engendering trust at all. You create a process to support the financial sign-off of a transaction, for example. But what you're not doing is giving the people that you hired the ability to make the right decision.
Yeah.
And small business, the reason I'm picking this up, Nick, is because of what you said there. Like, if I'm a founder, I can make those decisions, right? People in my team can also make those decisions. Sometimes they don't want to make the decisions because they are worried about the repercussions of having made that decision. The question is, if I want to codify in best practice where my team do the right thing by our clients and therefore by us in the long term, then they need to be in a trusted environment where it's okay for them to do it. It might go wrong. Something might break, but that doesn't mean to say they shouldn't have done the right thing. And that's the thing, that's ultimately where you need to get to. I mean, I think it's really fascinating, isn't it, the subject about how you enable big businesses to have that mindset, which I think is beyond the scope of what we're talking about right now. But I do think that fundamentally what you've got to remember is that people buy from people. You'll appreciate that sentiment. But that's the same thing in business. That's the same thing in a team, right? You will only interact with the people in your team that you can work with and that you can trust to deliver. If you're expecting them to do something in order for you to be able to do your thing, then you need to trust that they can do that. It's interesting as well, because I wrote in the article, that trust is not something you can just have. It's something that's
it's side effect of other things, isn't it? Yeah.
Which I think comes on to the other principles clarity, visibility, and consistency. They're the things that they basically help you build trust. And so,
let's talk about clarity then. How you think about it and how you enact it in the business, how you ensure it in the business.
so I mean, to me, clarity is fundamentally around: do I, as an individual, know what is expected of me in my role, within the tasks I'm doing, to achieve the outcome that we have collectively promised to deliver? Do I absolutely know what's expected of me? And do my peers know what I am doing to contribute to that? It's just good old fashioned writing things down, creating clarity, all the stuff that actually we sometimes don't do. When we're in such a fast-paced environment or working in an agile way, sometimes we forgo the longer conversations that you need in order to support generating the clarity that you want.
Okay. And if you miss that, what's the effect of it? I mean, obviously, you've run hundreds of projects at this point, maybe thousands. Is it just about things take longer? Is it about more errors? How does it manifest?
It's all of the above. I mean, if you don't have clarity, you can go off and do something for longer than you expect. If you aren't clear on when you should have finished or when you committed to deliver the thing that you're going to deliver, and you miss a deadline, then it diminishes trust, but it creates problems downstream and upstream of whatever's happening around you. So it elongates the delivery processes. It creates errors. It increases the opportunity, not the opportunity, but the issue around rework and, sort of having to go back over what you've done, which when you think about it, that you're well aware that within like a Scrum process, you have stand-ups every morning, and those stand-ups should be 15 minutes and no more. This is where we sit down and I tell you, what did I do yesterday? What am I going to do tomorrow? And have I got any blockers? Right. And so you can get absolutely fixated on this. Wait, with this daily meetup, it's only 15 minutes, only 15 minutes. Well, for the last 5 or 10 years, we've been having stand-ups. Sometimes they are 15 minutes. And you know what? Sometimes they're an hour. And they are an hour because that is not a wasted hour of meetings, because everyone hates meetings these days. Every meeting's a waste. But that is an hour where we are creating absolute clarity around what it is that we are trying to do. And this is as important in office as it is in a remote working setting.
Yeah.
Because you cannot work as a team. Everything we do is teamwork. You cannot work as a team if you don't understand what your part in the overall system of delivery is, and what is expected of you, and what you can expect of your partners in that delivery. And that's clarity.
Not just what you're doing, it's what other people are doing at the same time.
Absolutely. Because if you were a lone wolf and you were just, delivering a product by yourself, you don't have to write anything down. It's all in your head. You're fine. And if you make mistakes, it's on you.
Yeah.
But within a delivery team, team in capitals, you've got plenty of other people that are relying on you. And, we spoke about, when we're speaking about trust, if you're talking to a client and you are trying to explain to them, or, what are you expecting from them? How do you expect them to participate in the delivery process so that they're bought in, they're able to sign things off quickly? So many times I've been in project teams where you have a project sponsor who is a project sponsor in name, but does not have skin in the game, essentially.
Yeah.
They're not a member of the team. So you need them to make a decision, but they're only one small part of, or you are only one small part of their decision-making process. They could take a week to get around to your decision. Well, again, hey, Bob, I need an answer on this, this, and this. We need it by Wednesday. Otherwise, the team will be blocked. Like an extra 3 lines in an email, or just sending the email altogether. Clarity. Yeah.
All right. So let's move on from clarity then, because you talked about the stand-up and how you're talking to each other so that everyone knows what's going on, what's expected of them. How do you keep the information that matters visible? Visibility is the third of your principles. How are you doing that on a sort of day-to-day basis, and what's the impact of that?
But our team runs remotely. We've been running a remote team for the last 10 years. So we rely very heavily on digital tools to support our ability to make everything visible. And a lot of the processes that we run are about how we utilize our tools to create visibility. I call them progress indicators, essentially. But what they are is passive modes of creating visibility into a broader system. So
passive modes of creating visibility.
Yeah, so
I've unpacked that a bit.
Yeah. I'll unpack it. I'll give you a great example. Let's say you're using Trello as your tool to visualize work in progress. Some people will use a setup that says backlog, doing, done. They're your 3 columns of but by having just columns that just indicate the state of the work, like the work is in progress or it's done, essentially, what you're missing out on is all of the information that's probably in the card that says, well, what stage in the process is this at?
Yes.
What you do is if you create like an additional set of columns, which is, like backlog, up next, we always have an up next column that says these are the tasks that are coming up next so that people's aware of what their focus is going on to. Then we'll have columns that say, like design sign off, design to dev handover, in development, UX review, on test, on UAT, sign off, on production. And it looks like, to people that are not interested in creating visibility in the processes, it looks like a whole load of additional columns that don't mean a great deal, that seem overkill. But anyone can go into that board and they can see instantly the state of every single piece of work that's going on in that project or within our organization. We use that for all of the work that's going on in our business. And so by doing that, what we're doing is creating complete visibility into the whole system. If I want to know how utilized my UX team are, I can take a look in the design column across all of our projects and I can see, I've got 15 tasks going on for 3 people. That's going to be a problem. So I can solve that.
You can almost see the storm coming if there was a storm.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are other things as well. Like, for example, I used to have a designer that worked with me years back. Whenever you briefed him on a project, he would literally disappear into a black hole. And then you would see him like a week later for a review. He was a perfectionist. What he liked doing was getting his head down, just designing. No visibility, right? So predictably, given work on a Monday, by Wednesday, you're thinking, I wonder what's happening with that. I've got no idea what I'm going to have to keep an eye on that. And then Thursday, Friday, you're thinking to yourself, I was expecting to see something by now. I'm starting to build up some anxiety over whether this work is going to be done because, there's forward pressures. There's a pipeline in operation here. And then, on the Friday, you might review it, like it might be that it's 100% correct, or it could be that it was, there was a fundamental misunderstanding of what was trying to be achieved. And you weren't able to course correct quickly enough, essentially. So you've got another 5 days worth of work to do or something like that. What you need is, throughout that process, you need to create a mechanism where the outcome of the work is visible. Now, you've got things like Figma these days, which means that you've got this open canvas, you can see what's being worked on, you can drop in, take a look and say, okay, it looks like we're progressing the way we expected, or it's not. Yeah. And that's fine. So there are great tools that support visibility. This is the point of, like, Figma get it, right? They get that you need to create visibility in the design process. That's how they design their tools. And we need to do exactly the same. I need to know if I'm a developer and I need to review the work that someone else has just done, I need to be able to look in the PR ready for review column. I can see that there are 3 things stacked up. Okay, I got to spend an hour in the morning just going through those, applying the checklists and other things that I need to, tick off to support them. And then we move it to PR done. And if it's not approved, it goes back into the up next column, because you need to make sure that the work that you're doing is done as close, or the work you're reviewing or redoing is done as close to when it was originally created, because all that tacit knowledge disappears. So, our process is optimized to support that flow. And the reason is because what we want to do is to create this visibility across our whole delivery process so that I know what Nick Warren's up to. I know what, Matt Goddard's up to. I can see and course correct, and I can feel that trust. I can build the trust because I know what everything's doing, and it supports that whole process.
That makes so much sense. All right, so that's visibility. Let's look at the last principle then. We've got obviously consistency, and again, you think, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, I know obviously because I ran an agency myself for a long time, how hard that can be to do when you're doing different projects at the same time for different clients potentially, and different people working on different bits. So how does it show up? How do you make that principle real inside UX consultancy?
Checklists and accelerators. Basically, what it comes down to, if we want to be consistent, then we turn what we're doing into a standard operating procedure or a checklist, and we enforce, like signing off of the checklist as you go through. You know what you're doing. And the other thing we do is we try throughout design and development and, the whole gambit of what we do, everything we do really, what we do is to try and build accelerators. Basically, it's in software development, it's code reuse. You build a component for this and you can reuse it everywhere else. You have the same as design systems in design, but what we use is that exact thinking across all areas of our business so that we can start using these building blocks to make sure that we can get further down the design process or the delivery process, using a set of very consistent behaviors, a set of consistent outcomes. And like an example, I'm going to hold my hands up because consistency is really hard. When you're busy, when you've got a load going on, trying to be consistent or maintain that discipline is really, really hard. And sometimes we fail. Most of the time we don't, but sometimes we do. And, but one of the things, what we always say, for example, is you never, ever start creating any wireframes until you have created the user journeys that will support them. Because without the user journeys, you've got no concept of the screens that you need or the states that they're going to be in, or, what the error states are going to be. That's how you map out the work that you're going to do, essentially. And that's the rule, right? So if you are doing a review of somebody's design work, the first question you ask is, where are the user journeys? If the user journeys aren't there, then you're like, I'm not going to waste my time reviewing this. Do the user journeys, because I will 100% guarantee you that you have missed some screens or states.
Yeah.
I mean, and and they're the types of, if those checklists are the types of things that you need to rely on to support the consistency. So, and again, then everybody knows what's expected of them. You've created clarity in the whole overall process.
Yeah.
All of these things reinforce and build up on each other.
Yeah, it's clear, it's visible.
Yeah.
Checklist. I mean, it's like you obviously do software engineering, but it's process engineering, this stuff as well, isn't it? Building processes. And once you've got a standard operating procedure, of course, the benefit of that, the big benefit of that is that you can continually improve it. So
absolutely. These things don't, I mean, we have a rule, interesting when you say about improving your process and things, because absolutely it's a living documented process. But I always have a rule that we will only implement a change to our processes if someone can absolutely tell me what the onward value to our customers is going to be by implementing this change. And that's because what I don't want is for people just to say, you know what, there's a really cool new fad that's come in place and we want to do it that way. And, I don't like this one aspect of what we do, so I'm going to change it and propose the change. Like, if that change is not going to help us deliver more value, then we are not going to implement that change. And the value is either with our clients or internally with our people, because ultimately that's the system that delivers outcomes for our customers.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. It's like the, the lean idea of value stream mapping, isn't it? What matters, things that deliver value at the end to our customers, and also, to our teams, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you're 100% right. And I think what you triggered in my mind then was that a bit like you, I'm a bit of a magpie for looking outside of my industry and all that sort of stuff to establish what best practice is. And I think to myself, if airlines and Formula One engineering teams rule their lives with checklists and enforcing standard consistent behaviors, then why the hell shouldn't that apply to software development, for example?
Yeah. Well,
Like these are highly absolutely. These are highly optimized, efficiency driven machines. Like the airline industry has to stop accidents from happening again. Like one accident is one too many. And after that accident will never happen again because they analyze the problem. They look at every aspect of why that problem happened. And then they create a checklist that stops them from that thing ever happening again.
Yeah. It's that relentless improvement piece, isn't it?
100%. 100%. And, we started off this discussion with, why are these principles necessary? And these principles are necessary because they govern that ongoing, relentless drive for improvement, whether it's, self-improvement or whether it's improving for the business, whatever it is. And that's what drives it. That's why that something as simple as checklists are really powerful and important. You don't have to have a great big, off the shelf, like £100 per person project management system to enable you to act in a way that is right and enables you and your teams to be successful.
Yeah, perfect. Well, that seems like a good place to leave this. You're going to be writing more, I know. So we're going to be having more discussions like this. If you're still watching, it won't surprise you to know that Matt and I have known each other for a long time. We've had a lot of discussions about business over the years, and we're really looking forward to digging deeper into this whole kind of the idea of the accelerated digital development and how Matt's sort of massive depth of experience and my kind of gnarly business knowledge maybe help you guys out there and girls, help you develop the products that you're working on, the software that you're working on faster, more efficiently, how you can build trust and clarity and visibility and consistency and all the difference that will make to your business and your team. Is that fair enough?
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
All right. See you again. Thanks very much.
Thank you.